Okay, so this video title is right. Earth changes are getting worse. Webbot said this would be happening for many reports. It didn't get any better. No signs of letting up. As I said the other day in the last October Webbot, or this latest Webbot report, I said, I'm not going to read the whole Terra entity part. I want to focus on the markets and USA thing, part of the Webbot report. And I just said, I'll make it simple. More floods, flooding, and other things. Nothing going to change there. That includes more earthquakes, volcanic activity. It's always in these reports. So this is interesting because, as I've said before, things have to, cycles and stuff, they peak. And this whole earth change thing, 2012, December 21st, 2012, it hasn't peaked. It's getting worse. 2012's come and gone. And it's getting worse. So where's the peak? Where's the big, the climax of all this? Something big, you know what I mean, going to happen? And the answer might be yes. You remember the old guy, Edgar Cayce? I've mentioned him just a few times in some of my videos. He was like the Nostradamus of the early 1900s. Amazing. You can go read. Everything he said has been logged and recorded. Thousands of things. But some of the more notable stuff is all over the internet, and you can go read it. Just search, Edgar Cayce predictions, things like that, and you'll be pretty fascinated with some of what you find. But he had mentioned after the year 2000 or thereabouts, pole flip. He talked about pole flip, and he said that the new North Pole, when all that was said and done, would be somewhere in like Siberia or near Russia, somewhere over there. And I remember looking and taking a globe one time and moving it to kind of see where everything else went at that point, if Russia, that area near Russia, became the North Pole. But over the last several years, I've noticed the North Pole, where they say the magnetic lines are coming from, is creeping in the absolute direction of where Edgar Cayce said, near, again, I don't know if it was like Siberia or some other part of Russia, but it was over there. He says it, whatever it was, would be the new North Pole. And this damn thing has been moving so slow. And then all of a sudden over the last, and again, I'm going off memory, but only like over the last 20 years or 10 years or something, whatever it was, has it really sped up, like significantly. It's really creeping over in that direction fast. So keep that in mind, just, as I read this. From Silver Doctors, and he's got a post from the End of the American Dream, is the name of the website, endoftheamericandream.com, from Michael Snyder. Mr. Snyder, are you related to D. Snyder by chance? We're not gonna take it. Yes, you are. If there's a pole flip, you're gonna take it, and you're gonna like it. Over the past 30 days, there seems to have been much more shaking than normal. And this is particularly true along the Ring of Fire. This afternoon, I visited the official website of the U.S. Geological Survey, and I discovered that Chile had been hit with 12 major earthquakes within the last 24 hours alone. The smallest was 4.4 on the Richter scale, and the two largest both measured 6.9. That is pretty significant. In a 24-hour period, we have also seen dozens of volcanoes erupt recently, including the incredible dangerous Mount Popocatépetl in Mexico, if I'm even butchering that. Fortunately, we have not seen a major disaster that kills thousands of people yet, but many believe that all the shaking is leading up to one. In addition, the weather all over the world continues to get freakier and freakier. Just today, Yemen was hit by a second major tropical cyclone in less than a week. Any one of these strange disasters in isolation may not seem like that big of a deal. But when you start putting all of the pieces together, it starts to become clear that something really significant is taking place. Body Armor Super Drink Grape. Looked like it had decent stuff in it. It was buy one, get one free at Publix. So why are all of these things happening? Well, some experts point to the sun. In recent years, there has been a tremendous amount of hype about global warming, but the truth is that evidence is starting to emerge that indicates that our sun might be heading into a period of hibernation. Now, I'm also going to tell you about an interview I saw from Project Camelot with a guy named Dr. Paul Violette. And he's got a background that's pretty great. I would recommend you go and listen to it. It's old. It's years and years old. But he talks about this thing he calls superwave theory, in that the center of our galaxy, Milky Way galaxy, we have a black hole, and it bursts out or burps out these little waves. And as our solar system does this around the Milky Way galaxy in a nice sine wave, and it takes thousands and thousands, tens of thousands, whatever years, 26,000 apparently to do a full cycle up and down. His theory is that when these up and down waves, when you get to the center point, now you're aligned perfectly with the center of the galaxy, and there's these waves, whatever they are, of whatever force, I'm not sure, from the center of the galaxy that can cause the planets, the sun, everything to kind of get a little erratic. They respond almost like you're messing with magnets. That's not a good description of what he describes. He tells you the way, the scientific method and everything he's talking about. I would actually recommend you search YouTube for that. It's on YouTube. Project Camelot, Dr. Paul Violette. That's all you gotta search for. The sun will go into hibernation mode around 2013, 2030. And it has already started to get sleepy. At the Royal Astronomical Society's annual meeting in July, Professor Valentina Zarkova of Northumbria University in the UK confirmed it. The sun will begin its Munder minimum, grand solar minimum, in 15 years. Other scientists had suggested years ago that this change was imminent, but Zarkova's model is said to have near-perfect accuracy. And what did we see last winter? It was a very cold, bitter winter that set new all-time records all over the planet. Which, by the way, the Webbot talked about way in advance. And has already said, get ready for another brutal winter. Where was I? Near perfect accuracy. And what did we see? Very, very cold, right? Record-breaking lows all over the planet. Here is more from the same article he's talking about. Solar cycle 24, 2 cycles prior to the cycle that's expected to bottom out into a Munder minimum, was weak. In 2013 and 14, it reached its maximum far below average. Meanwhile, extreme cold weather anomalies. And by the way, we're going to get into the pole flipping thing, because I've read this and said, oh, this is some other things I've been thinking about are going to start making a lot more sense, I think. So meanwhile, extreme cold weather anomalies have occurred around the world. Last year, polar vortices slammed into the central U.S. and Siberia as a third hovered over the Atlantic. All 50 states, including Hawaii, had temperatures below freezing for the first time in recorded history. So much for global warming, huh? Snowfall records were broken in cities in the U.S., Canada, Italy, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, and elsewhere. Southern American states and central Mexico, where snow is rare, got heavy snow, as did the Middle East. This past summer, the cold didn't let up, with more temperature records across the U.S. and rare summer snow seen in Canada, the U.S., and China. Birds have migrated early in the last 2 years. Antarctic sea ice set a new record in 2013, and it was broken again in 2014. Oh, you mean Antarctic sea ice is growing back in the midst of global warming? You guys, you're kidding me. Come on. Will this upcoming winter be similar? Should we be anticipating a lot of cold and a lot of snow? I've been watching stories like this for a couple years. Our sun has begun to behave very erratically. I think it might have something to do with superwave theory, personally. And yet, very few people are paying attention. But without the sun, life on Earth would not be possible. So the fact that the giant ball of fire that we revolve around is starting to act very strangely should be a huge news story. And this is not something that scientists have just started noticing. This has been going on for quite some time. For example, the following is from a BBC article that was published last year. Quote, "I've been a solar physicist for 30 years, and I've never seen anything quite like this," says Richard Harrison, head of space physics at the Rutherford Appleton Laboratory in Oxfordshire. Oh, let me say that right. Oxfordshire. He shows me recent footage of that was captured by spacecraft that have their sights trained on our star, or our sun. The sun is revealed in exquisite detail, but its face is strangely featureless. He says, if you want to go back to see what the sun was like when the sun was this inactive, you got to go back about 100 years, he says. This solar lull is baffling scientists because right now the sun should be awake with activity. Another thing that many scientists are watching closely is the possibility of a magnetic pole shift. This has become such a concern that even scientists at NASA are talking about it. A major news story in the UK recently published an article entitled, "NASA, Earth's magnetic poles are switching with catastrophic consequences for humanity." And the following was the most fascinating part of the story for me personally. Bruce Jakosky, Maven principal investigator at the University of Colorado, Boulder, said when the switch does take place, the Earth's magnetic field, which prevents the sun's dangerous radiation getting through, will be neutralized for around 200 years. He revealed the detail during a historic announcement about how Mars lost 99% of its atmosphere and its oceans that could have housed early life. Mr. Jakowski explained that Mars had been blasted by solar winds, which had stripped it of its atmosphere for billions of years since the beginning of our solar system. He said, when the polar shifts happen, the Earth will have no magnetic field for about 200 years. During that time, the sun's solar blasts are expected to strip away at our atmosphere, as they did on Mars billions of years ago. And he says that certainly doesn't sound too good. How could humanity possibly survive if the Earth will have no magnetic field for 200 years? So, he says perhaps some would survive by living in underground facilities shielded from the sun, but certainly most of humanity simply would not make it. So let's think about governments all over the world going underground for as long as they've been, and these massive underground facilities designed to have life sustained for quite a long time. Here we are thinking, oh, just for war, nuclear war, not other reasons. Now, I just told you the other day through a video about NASA, the White House, is becoming a prepper and is concerned about EMP and things like that. Well, keep in mind, a massive solar flare slamming into an Earth with an extremely weak magnetic field around it, or magnetosphere, is going to let stuff come right through. And that stuff, that coronal mass ejection, can cause the same type of effect as an EMP. As they have said many times, the Carrington event in the mid-1800s, or maybe it was later 1800s rather than mid, but whatever, it knocked out telegraph wires, caught some of them on fire, just because of a solar flare. So that's the kind of stuff EMP bursts can do. So I'm thinking about all this, and I'm thinking about the WebBot and all this other stuff. Now, is this guy going to be right that it's going to last 200 years? It doesn't seem plausible to me personally, because humans have been around for many, 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 many thousands of years. So this isn't something new. It's just new for us because we've kind of rediscovered it, right? From probably the last time we had a massive catastrophe on Earth. You talk about Atlantis being destroyed and all that. I actually am a firm believer about all that stuff. I do believe that stuff existed. They had technology that would rival ours, or become way, way better than ours, maybe the same some years back. I just personally believe that. But if I'm seeing what Edgar Casey says, and the poles are moving over there, what happens if the Earth has to shift itself for the new pole, or however that even works? I don't even know, to tell you the truth. But if that's the case, and Earth's spinning, and you have all this water and landmass, and then the Earth ends up tilting to some new place, that landmass and that water is going to, through centrifugal force, is going to move. So places that have land are going to be flooded. Places that are flooded, some of them will be land. However, I don't know that that's such a thing that would happen just based off of things like Dr. La Violette talking about the massive ice core samples he got to check out, which went back like tens of thousands, maybe 100, I think a couple 100,000 years. He could see it. And every one of these ice core samples, he said, I see there's something that happens like every 26,000 years, every 11,000 years, and every 5,000, whatever, 125 years or so. Because they can literally slice the ice, and because of the seasons, and the melting and all that stuff that's in the atmosphere freezes in the ice when it comes down. They can literally count each year in these ice cores. So he sees these little black rings, dark rings, in spaces of 3. So he's calculated based off of the size of it. He knows these are the approximate years of time that goes by. Sometimes there's a lot of the debris, darkness in this little ring. Sometimes there's not. But the one thing that is there is these rings, and they're spaced apart perfectly. So we know that this whatever this thing is, and he says we know that this, what we're finding in here, isn't really from Earth. It's something that would be bombarded from space, this particular chemical or compound he talks about. So he knows that it's some kind of event to where this is coming in. So I'm thinking now, okay, if our magnetic field goes way down, maybe it's stopped. According to this scientist, it just goes away for 200 years. All kinds of stuff from space will just come right in. Boom, no problem. So, and I also believe that's why these whole chemtrail things have been going on for all this time. They've been dealing with, in my opinion, how to put an artificial barrier up there so that when this day came, as it gets worse and worse and worse, you're going to see more and more and more chemtrails. And sure enough, I would venture and say anyone who's been paying attention to the sky over the last 10 years, man, are there a lot of those damn chemtrails, more and more and more. This is my own little theory on that, but it is. So if we have, when she asked him in the interview, this guy, Dr. Paul La Violette, she says, so you've seen this cycle, right? So when's the next one due? And this is before 2012. She did this in like 2008, 9, or 10. And she says, well, I'm sure you've heard about the whole 2012 thing, right? The Mayan calendar. Is there, by chance, is your research showing that is the date, maybe? And he says, well, we're only as good as our technology, and the current technology gives an margin of error of about 400 years. So I can tell you that within the 400-year margin, we're absolutely expecting one anytime, but within 400 years. So yeah, it's in the time frame of when it should happen. I can tell you that much. You don't say. So I think there are things to be concerned about still. 2012 came and gone. Life is great. Don't worry about it. Don't sweat it. And I want you to think about something else. You remember the old French Prime Minister, 500 days last year, or whatever it was, in exactly 500 days from now, climate chaos will ensue. We have 500 days to work together and do such and such. We, as in the elitists or the men of different countries, the leaders, and we have this plan, whatever. I think, after reading this right now, I think it's hitting me. This is what he's talking about. There's going to be major problems coming from the sun, solar flares, space. Our magnetic field is collapsing rapidly, which I remember reading an article from NASA years ago saying that over the last, I don't know how many years, 8,000 years or something, the magnetic field of Earth has dropped to like what's left is like 10% of what it was. Something like that. I thought that was fascinating when I read that. And NASA said this. Oh, that was 2008, I think. Huh. So we have all this climate problems. We got these earthquakes going off. I was reading about another volcano going off. It's happening all over the damn place. Fukushima's, a little small earthquake hit over there not that long ago. It hasn't stopped. It's getting worse. And this guy, Paul LaViolette, said in his theory, it's just a theory, that you would know if this little super wave is coming because it would be preceded by what he said should be a gravity wave. And when the gravity wave from the center of the galaxy comes out, so the super wave thing is here, gravity wave's in front of it, it's always in front of it. When it gets to, say, Earth or our solar system, the gravity wave would cause such problems, distortions, whatever, within our solar system or within our planet specifically, once it got here, that he said you should see volcanic activity, earthquake, all that stuff should really pick up. That's what I would expect when we know that this thing's here. So again, I'm seeing all this and putting all this together, remembering all this stuff. Okay, we are having more earthquakes, more powerful, weird weather, more powerful weather, all kinds of stuff going on. Big time sinkhole phenomenon out of nowhere, right? All this stuff. And then I'm thinking of the Webbot report where he said just recently there's going to be something coming up regarding chemtrail planes, the plane spraying it, where people demand that they stop, or if something happens to where they stop, it might be budget cut, it may be something. We got to stop that program. And then when they stop the program, not sure why, but all of a sudden the people decide, no, go ahead, turn it back on, go ahead, yeah, let them go up there and spray. It's okay, let them go back up there as soon as possible. So I can almost see this kind of thing playing out, where we think they're spraying for some stupid reason and they're poisoning us, and they're actually up there trying to help stop CMEs and whatever particles and things coming in from space and the sun by putting that crap up there. Because they were saying that what some of the stuff's made of, barium and this and that, and some of these chemicals that are up there, sure enough, have the ability to block some of that stuff. So I'm like, okay, that's probably why they've been doing it this whole time. And getting worse with it, right? More and more and more spraying. So I think there's something here. Are we going to have a zero magnetic field for 200 years? No idea. Maybe it just stays weak for 200 years. Or maybe it does go away for a short period of time and then comes back on. But while it's off, we're in deep trouble. Potential for maybe asteroids to hit or CMEs to come in. I don't know. No idea. I'm just kind of speculating here. But this is something to pay attention to. Because if something like this really happens and like a big problem comes of it, you're not going to be concerned about anything else. Period. Everything else you thought you were worried about immediately went away. Trust me on that. Gotta go. Take care.